fantastic. So I'm incredibly honored to be doing the keynote and closing out today. I don't have any slides. I've got a couple of notes, so we're just going to go and see where we land. So I want to start here. One of my favorite people in the world is Thomas Sankara, who's a bit of a controversial figure, right? And on the 8th of March in 1987, in one of his many stirring speeches, this revolutionary and former president of Burkina Faso, and also one of the most ardent feminists, said this: "We do not talk of women's emancipation as an act of charity or because of a surge of human compassion. It is a basic necessity for the triumph of the revolution. Women hold up the other half of the sky." And, in the same speech, he also makes a really impassioned appeal, not just for the inclusion of women in politics and the economy, but noting that for this real change to occur, they would need to change systems in a way that was really fundamental, that they would need to think in new ways, so shift their mental models, and that there would need to be new tools that would enable women to participate. And it's interesting to me that 30 years later, we spent today having this conversation about the inclusion of women, again in the economy, but this time through the lens of technology. And I see so many parallels, right? I see that women continue to be holding up the other half of the sky, but in so many ways to be invisible or unheard. And we've heard that from a lot of the speakers today. We see also an undergirding of frustration from various quarters. And I think what that is that we are not content, right? And we do not see this need for change as an act of charity, but we see it as a necessity, as we've heard in the speech just prior to this. We are seeing that we are moving into a world that will be dominated by technologists, or the technocracy, as I call them, and they will be determining where jobs are created, how education is designed, healthcare, finance, and we want to make sure that women are a part of the design of this future. So really, everything that I'm going to say today is going to revolve around these three key themes: systems, models, and the design of solutions, right? So thank you so much for reading through my bio. As I was preparing for this, asking myself, why have you asked me to speak? What do I know about the problems that we are facing and potentially the solutions that could be useful? It occurred to me that really potentially the answer lies in 4-year-old me. So my name is Buhle Goslar, but I was actually born Buhle, and my second name is Miranda. So when I went to preschool, my school teacher decided that this Buhle was just way too difficult to pronounce, and certainly in its longest form, Buhle was just not going to work. So she decided that I would now go by my middle name. No conversation, no request for permission, nothing. And, thinking about it, she was not a bad person. She was just a person who was operating in a system where this made sense, that in this nursery school where there were not many people of my color, and this name was too difficult to pronounce, she could just change it. And it's interesting to me that from that point on, I have gone on to continue to navigate my way through many systems like this, where in fact, I would be underrepresented, or, just be in a space where it's not designed for me, right? And I think that is a lot of the experience that so many people have shared here today. And I think, the message, I suppose, is this: is that just because a space is not designed for you, and the way that you talk or your name or your gender makes you feel like you don't belong, doesn't mean that you don't belong. Just go there anyway, go into these spaces. And that is a way that we can actually shift the system. And those same systems which were not made to support and sustain you will change. When you thrive, they will change. So I guess maybe that's the first reason I'm potentially speaking to you today. The second reason is that, as Chinyiko said, I am the CEO of JUMO, which is a technology company. You can look us up at jumo.world. Now, JUMO is an amazing business. It is literally the best work I have ever done in my life. We are at the forefront of using technology and advanced data analytics to redesign how financial services is delivered and also to whom it is delivered. So this is a company that was founded in 2015. We've already served across the African continent and Pakistan over 16 million customers. We have originated of nearly $2 billion in loans on our platform. And we are a part of the solution, right? When it comes to people being able to access financial services in a way that they never have before, we are a part of that. And our technology is also really changing access for women, because as you know, financial exclusion is a huge global issue. And we were all incredibly excited when the new Findex data came out telling us that the unbanked numbers had gone down from 49% to 31%, which is great, except that women still continue to really lag, even in that context, right? And with the work that we are doing at JUMO, we are making sure that this advanced data analytics actually works for women. So you heard in the earlier talk about how sometimes bias is built into the algorithm. Well, those are the types of questions that we are asking ourselves. We are saying, what makes a person creditworthy? If we already know that women have less money, then does it make sense for us to over-index on cash flows in a mobile money wallet when we are scoring people? So that's incredibly exciting for me. And I think that, that's also another potential reason why I'm here talking to you, because I have many stories like this that I can tell you about how when you pull together a diverse group of people who understand the pain of the person on the ground, you can start to design solutions that include more people in economic opportunity, and also then change livelihoods of millions and millions of people. So yes, the key takeout there is go into these types of industries like the one that I'm in, where you can challenge existing models of thinking, whether it's in finance or education or healthcare, and help them to build new models where technology actually starts to then become a catalyst for inclusion and not for exclusion. And then I guess the last reason why I have a lot of interest in what we're talking about today is that I do see myself, in my role as a business leader, in my role as sometimes a teacher and a mentor, as a designer of solutions, right? I think that, I am a socially minded social scientist. I've always been very interested in, the issue of inclusion. Who gets left behind? Why do they get left behind? How can we change this? Why do we have blind spots, etc.? And there's so much to learn in that, right? And I think that in my experience, one of the things that I've learned is that sometimes the answer is not necessarily in the technology itself, right? There are things in the way in which we design an entire experience that lead people to be left behind. And it's important that you have diverse perspectives at the table. So one of the things that we do in my company is that we have customer intelligence analysts in country, in each of the countries where we operate, and they go out there and talk to our customers. So one of the things that we observed in our business was that despite many of our best efforts in terms of, building thin file strategies and changing our customer experience to be more welcoming for women, we were still seeing women lagging behind. And what we did is we launched some qualitative research. And one of the things that we learned was that a big driver in take-up of digital financial services in our markets was the availability of female agents, right? Those are the mobile money agents who do cash in and cash out in a lot of African countries. We don't have them here in South Africa. So if you're from South Africa, this might sound unfamiliar, but they are essentially the backbone of money systems in a lot of African countries. And so we actually started to work with our telco partner to say, how do we actually recruit more women so that this experience from end to end becomes far more inclusive for women? So yes, this is an area that I'm really, really passionate about. And I think that, when I think about how do we build more inclusive tech ecosystems, one of the things that always comes to mind for me is that there is a lot of energy, there is a lot of ingenuity on the continent, right? And it needs to be harnessed. And I think what we're needing to help businesses to see is that this isn't an act of charity, like I said earlier, but that in fact this can have very real business value. So yeah, and then I guess that leads me to the next issue, right? Which is, so then what are the problems that we want to prioritize in terms of solving, and what are the things which I believe will really shift the dial. I don't think I'm going to tell you anything completely new. I think that the speakers today have really done a brilliant job already. And I think that, my contribution really is pulling together some of these different strands in a way that you can take this away with a couple of points being top of mind, right? So in cybernetics, there's a saying, which is the purpose of a system is what it does, right? And I find myself, whenever I'm talking about issues of inclusion, constantly coming back to this, right? And the reason I come back to it is that, as a starting point, it's incredibly useful, because what it tells you is that if a system is excluding women, whether it's excluding women from consuming the product or excluding women from participating in the design of the product, it means that that is its purpose. So when you start from that premise, then you actually start to go, okay, let's deconstruct this system, because we actually need it to work differently. So how do you deconstruct that system? You have to go to every single part of that system, right? So for me, it's go everywhere, right, is my advice to you. I sometimes joke that, my plan in life is to be a tri-sector career athlete. And what does that mean? It means that, in driving inclusion, I participate in every sphere, right? I have my job, my day job, which is in the private sector. I work a lot with nonprofit organizations in the social sector. I work also often with regulators. I actually teach a course to regulators to help them use digital financial services to drive inclusion. Why? Because I want to be able to influence policy. And I think that apart from making sure that women have technical skills, one of the things that we need to do is also make sure that women are participating at every level across the systems, because a lot of what we experience is a result of so many different things which are being driven in so many different sectors, right? Then the second thing which I think we need to think about and really solve is an issue of opening our eyes, right? And this is about, in your workplace or any model that you operate in, really look at it and ask yourself, what is going on here? How is every single thing that we do driving either keeping people out or only letting certain people in, right? So look at your workplace, look at things like, how does hiring work? What interview questions get asked? Who gets advocates? How do people think about people's accents? Where does business get done? Someone raised that earlier on, things like hobbies, etc., etc. Ask yourself that. So that's another thing that we need to constantly be keeping top of our minds. And then I think the last thing is also really asking ourselves a lot of questions around how we are designing certain spaces. There's been a lot of talk lately about driving entrepreneurship, right? And we have to ask ourselves questions around some of the design choices that we make. So do we need more innovation spaces, or do we need more investors, right? What kind of behaviors do we drive with entrepreneurs when every time they need funding, it comes in the form of a competition? Are we driving the scarcity complex, right? And then we also need to ask ourselves things like, how are the ways in which we're structuring remuneration packages influencing who can enter certain spaces, because depending on your background, sometimes you're actually not able to go into a startup, for instance, because it's too high risk and you have too many dependents, and maybe you're the first graduate in your family, etc., etc. So if you're operating in those spaces, ask yourself those questions, right? And that's for, more around the entrepreneurship value proposition. But then there's also the issue of the employee, value proposition, things like hours, where do you locate your offices, all of those things we have to be thinking about. So it may sound like I've spoken about a lot of problems, but I think that, if you ask me how I feel about where we are as a gender, I would say that I am very encouraged about where we are. We're very far from where we need to be, but I think that what we're starting to see is really some green shoots of progress. And these green shoots of progress, as I see them, are in 3 areas, right? We're still talking about systems, models, and solutions, right? So the first is that I see that women are voting, in Africa, but also across the world. Women are voting to shift the system. So they're voting in terms of the choices that they're making politically, which is great. So they're voting for people who are going to invest in women. You can see it in the number of female leaders that we have across the world. And who are setting a great example, by the way, right, with COVID. But women are also voting in other ways, right? They're voting with their wallets. They're more aware of where they spend their money. They're voting with their voices. They're voting with their time and their energy. And they're showing up and saying, yes, I can, I belong here. And that's really great. And it makes me feel very encouraged. And I'm also encouraged by the fact that within the tech community, I'm seeing so many young women founders. Some of you might know Paris, for instance, from Farm Drive in Kenya, building companies from the ground up, partnering with large organizations like a Safaricom. And that makes me feel really, really encouraged. Women are voting to shift the system. The second thing that I'm really excited about, that I'm seeing happening, across the world, is that tribes are reshaping the models for access and choice, right, for women. And I think, you have organizations like Girl Code, who are essentially bringing together this amazing community of aspirants and walking with them, right? You have amazing communities of practice like Inspiring 50, and those really provide a really safe space for women in technology. And you have a bunch of people that you can call when you're looking for an investor, when you discover that you're getting 30% less, paid 30% less than a colleague. What do I do now? So that's really important. And then I also see a growing, tribe of just cheerleaders, mentors, some of them organizations, some of them individuals who are really lending their voice to this cause of the inclusion of women in technology. And a great example of that is Tumi at Offerzen, who is doing amazing work in preparing young people, women, people of color, for the workplace, and also in preparing the workplaces to receive people who are from non-traditional backgrounds in those environments, right? So that for me is fantastic. Most exciting of all, I think, for me has been seeing people really raising the alarm around funding, right? Because we don't just want women to have jobs in technology. We want women to have ownership as well. And so the issue of funding recently has really received a lot of attention. I think Larry Madawa wrote a great article a couple of weeks ago, which caused an enormous stir, just really looking at the fact that in Africa, you're more likely to get funding for an African venture if you are actually a white American, based in Kenya, than if you're a Kenyan, for instance. And I think, bringing attention to these issues is incredibly important, but also putting money behind them in the way that people like Melinda Gates have done with Pivotal Ventures, really focusing on women entrepreneurs, is also incredibly important. And what I would say around this, the issue of money, is something I am super passionate about, which, I'm like, yes, let's do speeches, but let's also make sure that we are engaged in sustainable giving and actual financial support. So I'm really hoping that people that have participated in this event, for instance, will also set up a debit order. They didn't ask me to say this for Girl Code, but I'm really passionate about it, for Girl Code, and support the effort, right? And make sure that they're able to continue to do the work that they are doing. And, you know, if you are in a position where you have the capital, become an angel investor. I think those are the types of things which we're starting to see, you know, happening, but we need to see more of. Most recently, we saw from Flutterwave. He left his business, which he founded, and he's actually founded a new venture business, Streetwise Capital, that is investing in young African entrepreneurs. Now, I want to see a lot more of that happening, and it's just something which gives me hope. And then, you know, lastly, I'm encouraged to see that the way in which we're designing work is getting a makeover. I loved it the other day when someone said to me, well, you know, we can't do internships which are not paid because then we'll exclude people. And I was like, yes, we can't do that, right? So people are finally starting to understand the things that matter, in terms of being able to bring people into the workplace to participate who would normally not be a part of it. So in closing, really the last thing that I want to say is that women do hold up the other half of the sky, right? We are 50%. But if we really want to see a shift in inclusion in technology, we need to be visible and presented in these spaces, right? That is when we will actually start to see a really, really big difference, because just having one woman around the boardroom table is not enough. We need to have a chorus of voices, right? So that diversity can be heard, so that diversity can change policy, can change a system, can change models and ways of thinking, how products are designed. And I really hope that all of you, whether it's in choosing a career in technology or in supporting other people in entering technology, will be a huge part of this effort to ensure that women are represented in their numbers, but also in their diversity, because we're not one homogenous segment, we're all different, right? So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next chapter in driving inclusion and diversity in technology across the continent. Thank you, Tiniko.